But what I noticed is there's probably about three, and I've been here for 2.5 years, living, and there's about at least three like drivers, like family drivers, right? And they just sit in their vehicles like in the garage area. It's kind of like a covered parking where it's open on the sides. It's not like a total garage, but it's like covered parking or whatever. And they just sit there. And I always wondered, well, that's pretty nice to be able to, in other words, in case their employer has to go to the store or something like that, they're there, waiting. There's no waiting. There's no grab, no taxi BS. They just got the driver, and they pay him so much a day. I don't know what they pay him. I imagine if they don't actually have to drive anywhere, if they're just sitting there all day, I don't know. I have, you know what I mean? Like at least 500 pesos, maybe 1,000 pesos a day, just for if they're just sitting there, you know what I mean? Like, and then if they use them, they actually have to drive somewhere, maybe they pay them extra or whatever, I don't know. But I always used to think, like, are they just, like, is that just for convenience, because these people have money, they can afford to do that, and they don't want to, they're too old to drive or themselves or whatever, you know what I mean? So they don't have to, they save money on not having to have a car, but then at least now they can have, transportation that's just there where they don't have to mess around with like taxis and grabs. And I used to think that that was it. You know what I mean? Like that's the main reason, right? Then I started thinking about it, and I was like, because there's a hospital not too far from here, a decent hospital. But I mean, if you're older, or obviously if you're sick, something happens to you, you have to be taken to that hospital. You have to be driven to the hospital. And it's a one-way street. So in other words, even though you can walk down this street, if you're gonna walk there for like a doctor's appointment, but if you're gonna drive there, you got to go around. You got to take the other street that goes this way, and then go wind around, and then you know what I mean. Like you have to go like in a circle to get to this hospital. But then I thought, wow, that's a good idea. That's a brilliant idea to have a driver if you're elderly, especially, right? Like if you're a well-to-do Filipino and you're fairly, you're upper middle class or whatever, or wealthy. Because guess what, man? The ambulance system is not like it is in the U.S. You know, I mean, I don't really see that they have any kind of 911 type system where, you call them up and that ambulance is going to be there in 5 minutes, to pick you up. That's not the case here. Not even in the city. You know what I mean? There is ambulances here, okay? And they're not even the best of ambulances. They don't usually have the kind of equipment like life-saving or life-preserving equipment that you have in the U.S., like on a paramedic truck. You know what I mean? Because the paramedics are part of the fire department in the U.S., usually in the cities. They do have private ambulances also, but they're trained and I think equipped similarly, as the paramedics, I think. But here, they don't. It's just a ride. You know what I mean? Like they're giving you a ride to the hospital. They put their lights on, and people can get out of their way, and they can drive fast and all that if they can, right? So it's better than just a regular vehicle or whatever. I guess if you're as far as driving through traffic, people will move over, like they do in the U.S. But like I said, they're not going to have life-saving equipment. So the bottom line is, if something happens to you, you get injured or sick or something more serious even, you need to get to the hospital as soon as possible. And the best way to do that is to have your own driver waiting. You know what I mean? Like somebody helps you, go down the elevator and down to that lower level, and then you have the guy right there waiting. Get into his car, and he takes you there. It's a lot faster than if you were going to call the ambulance or whatever. They do have some kind of a system here, but it's not going to be as efficient as it is in the U.S. Okay, and I'm talking Manila now. Like so. Forget about like Dumaguete and these other areas that are expat, rich areas, because of course you hear all these stories, and look what happened to every man has a story, right? Mark Thornton. I mean, he died, probably because, I mean, if he would have had a better ambulance system here, maybe he would have lived. I don't know, maybe not. But I'm just saying, that doesn't help. It took him 25 minutes to get him to the hospital. Okay, you need to get to the hospital as soon as possible, man. When you have an event like that, a stroke or a heart attack or whatever, and then they need to be working on you in the truck, in the paramedic truck, like they do in the U.S. to try and save your life. You're not going to get that here for the most part. So anyway, the key is to get to the hospital as quick as possible. So what better way, really, than if you have your own driver? You know what I mean? Like, it really is. I mean, they're there waiting. They're just sitting there. You know what I mean? Like, literally, sometimes they even run the engine. They periodically turn the engine on for a while just to make sure everything's fine, with the car, or with their vehicle. Usually they're SUVs or vans or whatever. They're usually larger vehicles too. They're not like these little cars. They're usually SUV type vehicles. But anyway, it's just fun and funny. I've been here so long, and I've seen these. I go walking in this area like every day. For like 45 minutes a day or whatever. I'm walking around here. And I see these cars parked there with the guy sitting there. For like 2.5 years. And it just occurred to me like, hey, that's the best reason, to have a driver, is for possible taking it to the hospital if you need it, Not just like, oh, take me to the store. I mean, they do that too, you know what I mean? Obviously, on a day-to-day basis, that's mostly what they probably do. But in the case of an emergency, they're there, to take you to the hospital. So, that's it, dudes. Just something to think about. Peace out.